So you found out about aphantasia and you think you have it? Let me ask you a question. Why do you think you have it? And now what if I told you that you might not actually have aphantasia? Okay, so I can hear you now. Alec, how dare you tell me what I do or don't have, right? What my experience is, which I get it. But stick with me. I find that many people misclassify the experience of aphantasia and are actually looking for something else. And hey, this is totally understandable that this happens because it's an entirely subjective experience. The mind's eye, I mean, in our mental landscape. So by watching this video, at worst, you'll come out on the other side going, yeah, I definitely have aphantasia. But at best, you might actually realize that maybe you don't experience aphantasia to the degree that you thought you did. So here's what we're going to talk about in this video. First, how two people can experience the same exact thing. One person can say it's aphantasia and the other say it's visualization. Second, we're going to dig into the subjective nature of aphantasia, the mind's eye, and really thought itself. And third, we're going to dive into how interpretation and context shapes our experience. Okay, so now here's the thing. I don't want to communicate that I don't think aphantasia exists. It definitely exists. We see it not only in people's subjective reporting of their experience, but also in fMRI data, high-density EEG reports, these sorts of things. People that experience aphantasia are leaning on different parts of the brain, it seems, than people that experience visualization. But here's the thing, it might be a lot more rare than what we currently understand or our current best estimates. And I'm pretty confident that the confusion lies in the misinterpretation of what the mind's eye experience is like. The mind's eye is entirely subjective. It's completely up to you and how you determine that you are experiencing that. And your context for what the mind's eye is like, or even any thought that you have, would change how you frame the interpretation of what you're experiencing. In other words, framing determines the self-diagnosis. I've said this over and over, but seeing, when somebody says they visualize and they see something in their mind, typically they're not actually seeing anything. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. So now go ahead and ask yourself, am I confident that I indeed experience aphantasia? And if so, why? What are the actual bullet points of why you experience aphantasia? And if you want to take it a step further, ask yourself how you experience thought when you think of something. Because now here's the thing. Two people can experience the exact same thing mentally, but one says they have aphantasia and one says they visualize. But why can this happen? What I find is that the mind's eye is completely subjective, right? It's all based on the interpretation of how you believe that you're experiencing what you're experiencing. And people may interpret their thought experience in a number of different ways. Some say that the sense of roundness is visual. Others might say that it's not. So how you frame what's happening in your mind will always dictate what you report happening to others. But it gets stranger than even just that. It actually starts to dictate your experience, which we'll talk about. And here's the interesting question. If it does all rely on interpretation and reporting, how then would researchers like myself know what you're experiencing or be able to get to the bottom of it? So hypothetically, let's imagine a device. Now, we don't have anything like this quite yet, but let's say this device was able to take the brain readings of an individual and produce exactly what they were thinking of on a screen, what they were thinking of visually, of course. That would be really convenient because that would give researchers a way to know exactly the image that someone was thinking of. So let's say we plug two individuals in this device, and they have the exact same brain activity and the exact same mental experience of what's going on in their mind. In other words, objectively, let's just say that they were both thinking in visuals. So that device takes a reading and produces the image. Yet one of these individuals still reports that they have aphantasia to the researchers, while the other does not. They recognize that they're visualizing. What this is entirely coming down to is the person's subjective interpretation of their mind's eye experience, even though they experience the same thing. Now, I want to remind you here that this is just the best language that I have after 7 years of doing this and talking with hundreds of individuals. And I really believe that if we could see thoughts like this, like if we had a device like that, many would be shocked. And indeed, many who jump on a call with me, even just to strategize, do get kind of shocked during that call as we dig into whether or not they experience aphantasia. So if you're curious and you want to talk to me, grab a call. The link is in the description. So the reality is this. If somebody does visualize, but they contextualize it wrong, well, you will never know. All you'll ever hear from them is that they don't visualize. It wasn't visual. And this leads to a lot of mis-self-diagnosis, it seems, as well as putting a complete halt on progression if somebody's trying to train. But it can also close a subconscious door where they cannot consciously experience the mind's eye too. So let's look at this. Let's look at the spectrum of visual imagination. At the bottom here, you have aphantasia, then you got hypophantasia, then common phantasia, and at the top, hyperphantasia. So the way that somebody can think visually can range from just words or non-existent visuals to light visuals, like maybe one or two elements of a visual in hypophantasia, to images to very lifelike images in hyperphantasia. But here's the kicker, that most of these visualizers, wherever they are at, don't actually see anything when they close their eyes. It's still just black for them when they close their eyes. What they do have happen, though, is a feeling, an internal sensing of what the thing that they're thinking about would look like. And if I had to estimate, I'd say about 60% of the people that jump on a call with me, believing that they have aphantasia, end up leaving the call realizing that they had maybe a little bit more visualization than they realized, or even that they were a common phantasic, or in some cases, a hyperphantasic. So let's really let this sink in for a second. I mean, if most visualizers don't actually see anything, what does that mean for how the broader conversation of this topic is contextualizing mind's eye? Because you see that confusion all the time, whether or not visualizers see anything. And I've made videos on this again and again and again because it's such an important point. So now, ask yourself, could this be you? Could it be possible that you're miscontextualizing the experience of the mind's eye and that you don't have aphantasia to the extent that you believe that you do? And if you take a moment to analyze a thought, I would say something very familiar like, let's say, your front door. What could be happening in your mind that may be an experience that is sensory in nature? Don't even start with visuals only. Maybe a sense of space, maybe a sense of distance, maybe a sense of sound from the environment, anything. And of course, look for the visuals too. Are you not seeing the rectangle of the door, but do you have a sense of the rectangle? Do you have a sense of how far it is from you? And maybe you don't see the color of the door, but do you get a sense of that shade, no matter how strong that sense is kicking in? These sorts of things. That may be a visual thought. And so this topic is really tricky and finicky to pin down because it's so subjective. And our best measurement methods of the mind's eye have honestly been pretty lacking for quite a while now. In this field, we rely heavily on one questionnaire that honestly, in my opinion, doesn't do the best job at measuring mind's eye or presenting scenarios that would cause visual imagery to kick in the first place. Also, things like this, the red star test, did some lasting damage back when the conversation of aphantasia first came on the scene. Luckily, it's not passed around as much anymore. But this is a perfect example of what we call projected imagery, what people that can see something when they close their eyes. But it's not a good representation of somebody with just regular mind's eye imagery that's just in their mind. And this misrepresentation of projected versus regular mind's eye imagery is why I came up with the term prophantasia in the first place. So some of you watching, not all of you, but some of you may actually be better classified as a hypophantasic, not an aphantasic, if you have elements of visuals kicking in, even slightly. And what's really trippy about this is even if somebody starts making progress, let's say they objectively do have mind's eye imagery kicking in, if they're miscontextualizing it, they will only ever report back to me or whatever researcher they're talking to, that they experience aphantasia, that it is not visual. And so really on my calls, that's the most important thing that I do with people is coach them through that process, that revelatory recontextualization process. So now, at the end of this video, some of you may be realizing that you do indeed have aphantasia, and if that's you, then more power to you. Glad I could help solidify that. But another percentage of you may be realizing that you have a little bit more imagery than you thought you did. And it's not really your fault. It's the miscontextualization of what the mind's eye experience is even like. In fact, some of you may be better classified as a hypo, common, or even hyperphantasic. And I hope that statement and that question makes a lot more sense now than it did at the beginning. So now here's a really fun question to ask as a conversation starter. If you had to pick a moment from your life that was the closest to visualization that you got, what would it be? Please, I'd love to hear, comment your experience down below. And that's it for today. I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you next time.